There is a strange mix of disappointment, relief, and forced optimism that has settled over the Toronto Blue Jays fan base. And it is impossible to ignore how this offseason has unfolded without talking about expectations crashing into reality. For a long time, there was a genuine belief that a massive superstar move was coming. The kind of move that would reshape the lineup and send a message to the rest of Major League Baseball that Toronto was not just competing, but pushing all its chips into the middle of the table. Names floated around constantly, and every rumor felt like it carried weight. The idea of adding a true middle-of-the-order bat, someone who could change games with one swing, became almost a certainty in the minds of many fans, to the point where anything less now feels like a letdown. Even if the roster on paper is still strong, when the news broke that Kyle Tucker was no longer an option, that feeling hit hard. It was not just about missing out on a great player, but about what that decision symbolized. Once that door closed, it felt like the writing was on the wall regarding the future of the lineup. Especially with the uncertainty surrounding Bo Bichette, there was a sense that if one domino fell, the rest would follow. And that is exactly how it felt watching events unfold. The fear was not simply losing a star, but losing him to a direct rival within the American League East, which would have made the situation even more painful. In that sense, there was a strange kind of relief when it became clear that Bichette would end up with the New York Mets instead, sparing Blue Jays fans from having to see him multiple times every single season. In divisional matchups, even with that small mercy, it does not make the situation easy to swallow. Seeing a player who has been such a core part of the team's identity wearing a different uniform is always difficult, especially when that player has delivered so many big moments and carried so much offensive responsibility. There is an emotional side to this that goes beyond statistics and projections. Fans invest years into watching these players grow, struggle, and succeed, and when that chapter closes, it leaves a void that cannot be filled overnight. At the same time, once the initial shock fades, the more analytical side of the conversation starts to take over. And that is where things become more complicated. From a purely competitive standpoint, the Blue Jays are not suddenly a bad team. In fact, when looking at advanced metrics and overall roster construction, this is still viewed as one of the stronger teams in the American League. Wins above replacement projections still paint a picture of a club that should be in the thick of the playoff race, capable of competing with almost anyone on a given night. That reality clashes sharply with the emotional reaction of losing a marquee name, and that tension is what has fueled so much debate among fans. It is possible to acknowledge that the team is still good while also feeling frustrated that a clear opportunity to elevate the offense seems to have slipped away. The biggest concern moving forward is not whether the Blue Jays can score runs at all, but whether they can score enough runs consistently in the biggest moments. Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette represent elite offensive ceilings, the kind of players who can carry a lineup through cold stretches and decide a postseason series. You do not simply replace that level of production with depth pieces or internal improvements. That is where the anxiety really sits. The front office has made additions, and there is no denying that the pitching staff looks significantly better than it did last season. Both the bullpen and the starting rotation have taken meaningful steps forward, and that matters immensely over the course of a long season. Starting pitching, in particular, feels like a genuine strength now, with a full season expected from Trey Savage. There is real excitement about what his development could mean for the rotation. He has not even completed his first full year at the major league level, yet there are already people projecting him as a high-end number to starter, with some believing his ceiling could be even higher. That kind of upside is invaluable, especially when paired with a deeper, more reliable staff. Overall, adaptability will be key, but the raw talent is clearly there, and that gives the team a foundation they can lean on. The offense, however, may take a step back, at least on paper. That does not mean it will be ineffective or unproductive, but it does raise questions about how this lineup will respond. When things get tight, there are still plenty of capable hitters, still enough experience and skill to put pressure on opposing pitchers. But the margin for error feels smaller. This is where the frustration comes from for many fans, because the hope going into free agency was not just to maintain the status quo, but to take a clear step forward. The vision was to either replace a departing bat with an equal, or to upgrade the lineup altogether. And that simply did not happen in the way people imagined. It is important to clarify that feeling disappointed does not mean giving up on the team. There has been a lot of talk suggesting That criticism of the offseason means fans are abandoning the Blue Jays or declaring the season over before it begins. And that is not the case. This is still a competitive ball club with real strengths and legitimate postseason aspiration. The moves that were made should not be dismissed or minimized, because they address real weaknesses from last year. Particularly on the pitching side, the frustration comes from opportunity cost. From looking at what might have been, and wondering if the front office did enough to seize the moment. The Kyle Tucker contract itself is a perfect example of how wild the current market has become. A deal that averages $60 million per year is almost hard to process. And it speaks volumes about where Major League Baseball is right now in terms of spending and player leverage. These massive short-term deals with sky-high average annual values are changing the way teams and players approach free agency. For players, it creates flexibility and security at the same time. For teams, it forces tough decisions about risk, sustainability, and long-term planning. Watching the Dodgers swoop in and finalize that kind of agreement made it painfully clear that Toronto was not going to match that level of spending in this particular case. Once that reality set in, it became much easier to understand why Bo Bichette was unlikely to remain in Toronto. Losing a bat of that caliber without directly replacing it is scary, and there is no way around that. The hope had been that the Blue Jays would not just plug a hole, but significantly boost the offense, bringing in players who could transform the lineup overnight, whether it was one superstar or a combination of major additions. The expectation was clear, and falling short of it has naturally led to concern about how the team stacks up against the very best in the league moving forward. Even with all the disappointment swirling around the offseason, it is important to remember that the Toronto Blue Jays are far from a team in crisis. The underlying pieces remain strong, and the strategic improvements in pitching cannot be overstated. Both the starting rotation and bullpen have been reinforced with additions that give the team more depth, stability, and the ability to navigate the long grind of a Major League Baseball season. When you examine the roster from this perspective, the narrative changes slightly. While losing Kyle Tucker and seeing Bo Bichette sign elsewhere is undeniably tough, the team still has legitimate strengths that can carry them through the early part of the season and into meaningful playoff contention if everything clicks. Looking closely at the pitching staff, the upgrades are both tangible and promising. Trey Savage, now expected to pitch a full season, offers real potential to emerge as a top-tier starter. His adaptability and upside have been the subject of much discussion among analysts, and there is every reason to believe that he could become one of the anchors of the rotation. Having that kind of talent at the front of the rotation changes how opposing teams approach games, forcing them to think carefully about their lineup construction and strategy. The bullpen, too, has been bolstered with experienced arms capable of shutting down late innings and preserving narrow leads in a league where the postseason often comes down to which pitching staff is healthiest and deepest. These improvements are critical offensively. The challenge will be to maintain production without the star power that Tucker and Bichette would have brought. There is still talent, skill, and experience in the lineup, but the Blue Jays will need to find ways to manufacture runs in key situations. Consistency will be crucial, particularly when facing the elite pitching staffs in the American League East and during playoff matchups. The good news is that the team has players capable of stepping up and filling gaps when necessary, and there is room for younger contributors to emerge in the absence of the high-profile acquisitions many fans were hoping for. This combination of depth, potential breakout performances, and strategic execution could make the difference between a solid season and a truly exceptional one. The context of Major League Baseball's spending environment also cannot be ignored when evaluating the Blue Jays offseason. The market for elite players has become extremely competitive, with massive short-term contracts redefining what it means to compete financially. The Dodgers, in particular, have set a precedent by demonstrating how willingness to invest heavily can create not just a winning team, but an organization that attracts other top players almost effortlessly. Seeing a deal like Kyle Tucker's go through highlights the realities of the current landscape, where even well-resourced teams like Toronto have to make strategic choices about which investments are sustainable and which may be out of reach. It is less a failure on the part of the Blue Jays and more a reflection of how the system incentivizes certain spending patterns while creating practical limitations for other teams. Fans may struggle with the emotional side of this reality. Baseball is not just a numbers game, it is a deeply personal experience. Watching a player like Bo Bichette leave town, or seeing a superstar like Kyle Tucker sign elsewhere, hits hard because it is about more than production. It is about identity, loyalty, and memories of pivotal moments in games past. Every home run, every clutch performance, every highlight that became a part of the fan experience contributes to a sense of connection. When that connection is disrupted, even for strategic or financial reasons, it can feel like a loss on a more personal level, separate from wins and losses on the field. Yet, at the same time, there is reason to be optimistic. Baseball seasons are long, and a team's fortunes can change dramatically over the course of months. Injuries, breakout seasons, and mid-season acquisitions can reshape the trajectory of a team in ways that no offseason speculation can predict. The Blue Jays have a strong foundation of young talent, complemented by strategic additions that improve pitching, and that combination has the potential to offset some of the perceived gaps left by missing out on top-tier free agents. Execution, health, and timely contributions from both veterans and emerging players will ultimately define the season, more than any single signing. The broader issue of parity in Major League Baseball also frames how this offseason should be understood. The Dodgers, Yankees, and Mets have demonstrated how financial firepower can create dominant teams, but other organizations are restricted by ownership philosophies or market realities. The result is a league that can feel unbalanced, where certain teams repeatedly compete at the highest level while others struggle to keep pace. In this context, Toronto's strategy is about finding the right balance, improving the roster where possible while navigating financial and market constraints. The challenge is significant, but the approach is deliberate, grounded in the idea that sustainable competitiveness requires more than just chasing headline acquisitions. For fans, the coming season will be a mix of watching potential unfold and testing the resilience of the current roster. Pitching depth, bullpen reliability, and incremental offensive contributions will all play pivotal roles in defining how the Blue Jays perform. The uncertainty created by missed opportunities adds a layer of tension, but it also heightens the stakes, making each win and each big play even more meaningful. In a way, the situation forces a focus on team cohesion, adaptability, and the ability of individual players to step up in critical moments, highlighting aspects of baseball that go beyond simple star power. Off the field, discussions about spending, competitive balance, and the economics of Major League Baseball continue to dominate conversations among fans and analysts alike. The reality is that contracts like those signed by Tucker and Bichette are becoming increasingly common, forcing teams to make strategic decisions about how to invest in talent. The Blue Jays' approach reflects a nuanced understanding of that environment, aiming to create a competitive team without overextending financially or destabilizing the roster. This balancing act is tricky, but it underscores the sophistication required in modern baseball management. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. A potential showdown between Yamamoto and Roberts has ignited a storm of speculation in both Japan and the United States, with insiders hinting at tensions that could shake the foundations of professional baseball. Sources close to the teams have revealed that a heated debate over pitch counts has leaked to the public, sparking a crisis of confidence in Japan's baseball community and putting the Dodgers under an intense spotlight. Reports suggest that the controversy stems from differing philosophies on player management and workload, with Yamamoto's camp reportedly advocating a cautious approach while Roberts appears to favor a more aggressive strategy. The disagreement, which insiders describe as explosive, has fueled rumors that the young Japanese ace may reconsider his future with the team if the conflict escalates. Baseball analysts are watching closely, noting that such disputes rarely remain behind closed doors, especially when they involve high-profile players whose careers are under global scrutiny. The leak has already prompted intense debates across sports media, social networks, and fan forums, with supporters divided over who is right and who bears responsibility for the crisis. Some argue that the Dodgers management is struggling to balance the demands of a grueling season with the welfare of their players, while others suggest that cultural differences may be amplifying the tension, particularly in how pitch limits are perceived and enforced. Industry insiders hint that the Yamamoto-Roberts saga could have far-reaching implications. In Japan, The incident is being framed as a reflection of deeper systemic issues within professional baseball, raising questions about how young talent is nurtured and protected in Los Angeles. Whispers of locker room unrest and strained relationships between management and players have intensified speculation that the Dodgers could be entering a tumultuous period, potentially affecting team morale and performance. While neither party has commented officially, the persistent rumors have already reshaped narratives surrounding both Yamamoto and Roberts. Fans are left to wonder whether this is merely a temporary spat over strategy or the precursor to a more significant shakeup in baseball circles. Whatever the outcome, one thing is clear: the debate over pitch counts has transcended technical discussion and entered the realm of international intrigue, leaving baseball observers on edge as they await the next development in this unfolding story. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.